Hello, everyone. Wow, that's a tough room. Okay, so basically, my name's Iyare Igiehon. I'm an exec at the BFI, which sounds probably better than my job actually is. I work in the inclusion department. If you have any questions about work as the BFI's inclusion department, my colleague Mel Hoyes is here to answer any of the questions and make sure that all of the data and the facts are correct. So essentially, in addition to my work at the BFI, I also direct a film festival called S.O.U.L Fest, which happens at the BFI South Bank every August. And for the past 5 years, I've run a talent platform for BAME talent, which also happens at the BFI South Bank. I just kind of hang about there and do what I want. And essentially, that platform's about 40 or so BAME filmmakers and creates networking opportunities for them. So I've been doing that for the past 5 years. So today, I've got some notes. They wrote me some notes, and I told them that I wasn't going to stick to these, but I will use the first bit, because essentially, often when we have these sort of diversity debates, we don't actually get to hear from people who have like first-hand experience of the particular challenges that come around underrepresentation. And so we thought it'd be really interesting to grab a group of people together who could speak to some of those challenges and help us kind of understand some of the potential solutions. And so today I'm incredibly honored to be able to introduce Briny Arnold. Say hello to Briny, everybody. All right, seriously. Yeah, so I say someone's name, you clap, that's how it works, all right? Crumbs, do you know what I mean? I know it's been a long time since I was in Leeds, but the rules are the same everywhere, right? Do you know what I mean? Okay. Also, Harjeet is here with us. He's a commissioner at Leeds at Channel 4. Harjeet Chhokar.
Hello.
Brilliant. Well done. I only had to tell you once. Jude Spencer's here. He's a mental health trainer. And Charan Dhami, excuse me, okay. Sorry, we had this discussion, and who's an assistant AD in film.
And TV.
And TV, and Bollywood. Yeah. Okay, all right. So what I thought was very, very quickly, can we each just quickly run down, and we'll start from you, Brian, just work our way back down here, is just give us a little understanding of your work and what exactly you do in the industry.
Well, at the moment, I'm a drama producer. I'm just currently working on a 10-part sci-fi series for Sky One called Intergalactic. But before that, I've been in development and commissioning for a long time, so in television. So I helped to develop Intergalactic. That was a three-year journey. But I've also been a script editor and script executive, and I worked on the last 4 series of Peaky Blinders. I've done lots of other lovely TV shows as well, but my journey has generally been through scripted in television to where I am now.
And whereabouts in the country are you from?
I'm from London.
Which bit of London? This is important now.
Well, it's Fulham till about October.
West London?
Yeah,
West
sorry.
London, okay.
But saying that, all my work has generally been up north in Manchester and Liverpool and Bradford, all that kind of area.
But we're not going to go on that kind of West London bougie stereotype. We're going to forget that today. Okay, Jude, tell us a little bit about your work.
So I'm a mental health trainer, which means that I train mental health first aid, and a lot of people don't have a clue what that is, which is a lot like physical first aid, but for mental health. So in your office, on your set, on your shoot, the idea would be that you would have a mental health first aider who'd be there to spot the signs and symptoms of mental ill health, but also empower you to be able to do the appropriate thing in that instance. And I came to this from having worked for 12 years in the industry and having had my own episodes of mental ill health, and realising that actually I didn't know what was wrong with myself, let alone what was wrong with other people. So it was a really empowering journey that I've gone on, where I've learned how to look after myself better and how to look after others better. So the idea is that I run training courses in mental health first aid to help educate people about the signs and symptoms, and also in resilience, so people know how to look after themselves.
Sorry.
No, it's important.
Please go on.
Okay, so I'm a floor runner, so I'm part of the assistant directing department. So I spend a lot of time with the cast and the director and the first assistant director, and I help the third actually keep everything smooth and running free on the floor. So I've worked in TV, as I said, so it's like Ackley Bridge, Last Tango. I'm going to be working on The Syndicate, and I've also worked in some Hollywood films as well. So is everyone talking about Jamie, which was just filmed in Sheffield, and I did God's Own Country as well, which I think got money from BAFTA.
Okay.
As well, yeah. And then I also do some Bollywood stuff. So I've worked with Akshay Kumar and Amitabh Bachchan as well. So yeah, I'm kind of spread out between those. But it's usually drama. I usually do drama. I haven't done any reality.
So my name's Harjeet Chhokar. I'm a factual commissioning editor at Channel 4. We'll be based in Leeds. I'm kind of 8 weeks into the job, so if anybody wants to tell me what the job involves, that would be really helpful.
I'm 6 months into mine and I'm still trying to work it out.
I've worked in television since I left university, mostly, well, always in factual. So from obs docs to specialist factual to fact-ent, and I'm originally from West Yorkshire, from Bradford, so I've literally just moved back after spending 15 years in London.
Wow. Wow.
I was East London.
East London, okay, yeah, so we've got to kind of get these notes.
East,
West. I'm in South, you're South
I'm
now.
South.
I know, let's stop talking about London.
London, no, exactly, we're in Leeds, but like so I went to uni just down the road here, so it's really good to be back in Leeds. You know, it's interesting that, you know, one of the things we were talking about beforehand is that like when I finished uni, there was absolutely no chance that you were going to stay around here to work. I did a music degree, and it was like clearly you had to get back to London to get on with your work. And it's quite interesting that that's going to be a different, you know, people coming out of the Leeds University over the next few years, it's going to be a different sort of a situation. And so that's interesting, a bit of progress. But I thought the first place to start perhaps was just to maybe compare and contrast our journeys into where we've got. So like, you know, what did you do for education and what was your first job? And did you ever have a moment that you thought was a break? And that seems like too many questions at once, but you know what I mean? So come on then, start me off, help me out.
Okay, so I mean, my journey is that I'm from Sikh family, middle-class Sikh family, so my parents' expectations were, as soon as I was born, I was going to be a doctor or a lawyer, and if I wasn't clever enough for them, I'd become a dentist or a pharmacist or an accountant. So it wasn't anything to do with the media. That was completely banned. We weren't allowed to go to the cinema. Forget about it, basically. So I was always told, well, if I wanted to pursue that line, I'd probably be cut off. They want nothing to do with me. So we couldn't really have these open discussions. My siblings knew. My parents just didn't. So I went there and they did everything they could. So they sent to private school, and I went to university, and I got my master's degree. And then after my master's degree, it was like, right, you're going to do your PhD because your cousin's doing a PhD and you're the same age, so you have to kind of beat her. And so down the road, they're also a doctor. You're not a doctor, but you need to have a respectable profession. So if you're a PhD, you'll be a doctor in that sort of way. So it's all this sort of cultural stuff. Oh, yeah, that to be a doctor is to be God. And that's what most Asian people want. And I knew I wasn't going to go down that road. And I thought, God, you know, a bit dilemma now. How can I throw them off the scent? So I was like, you know what, I'm a bit tired of, studying. I need a break. So I was like, well, I really want to go to film school. And I didn't do anything. I didn't make films or know anything about it, but I could write. So I was like, right. So I kind of looked into going to film school, applied for film schools, got rejected, and looked at the fees, and had a heart attack. I thought, God, I can't afford frigging £41,000 a year for this. I cried loads. And then what happened is that I did a job, and then I did a teaching qualification, which I knew I would get £6,000 for. Save the £6,000 for my film fund. I'm respectable because I'm a teacher now. My parents are happy. And so I did that for a couple of years, and then I applied to Prague Film School because it was cheaper in the fees. And I went there, told my parents that I was going. A week before I went, I actually thought, God, maybe I should wait a little bit sooner, like a couple of days, because then that's like, I can pack everything. If they try and stop me, I can just get into a taxi and leg it. So it was like tension in the house and, not going, blah, blah, blah. What about the money? You're wasting your life. You're not going to amount to anything. It's not what we do. You don't know anyone. You're going to be a loser. I was like, well, I'll try it. So I went. They didn't speak to me for a year. They didn't give me any money, which is fine because I had my own money. So I had a contingency fund. So I went there, had a great time. They accepted me back. Then my friend wanted to to produce the film. You're not going. I was like, oh God, not this again. So I ran away from home for a year. I had some money already. They didn't speak to me. And then slowly, after a year, when I'm illegal actually. I was in Croatia, so I wasn't supposed to be there that long, but I managed to fluke it. Flew back, they accepted me, and then it took me 6 years to get a job. So that was a nightmare, 6 years. Have you wasted your money? You're a loser. God, what are we going to tell people? Why don't you just become a travel agent? Do your PhD. No, I'm sticking with this. Did a lot, went on courses, did a lot of interaction, and then creative access, got my break finally. And then slowly it's come on from there, and it's not, like, yeah, they're proud of me now.
Are you doing all right? That's what I wanted to know.
That's it, yeah.
That's the thing that I wanted to know is, how do your parents feel now?
They knew they couldn't stop me. That was the thing. They're like, you're not going to listen anyway. Oh, my kids are out of control. What would people say? I was like, oh, God, who cares what people say? You don't even speak to these people that you're moaning about. But yeah, so, they're okay. Of course, now they're a bit like, you're going to get a bit more further up now, come on. You've been too much being a runner, come on.
There's always something.
It is, isn't
when
it?
I went to uni, I did a music degree, and my dad eventually, resignedly pulled me aside and said, all right then, well, once you finish this, you can come back and then you can do a proper degree. So that was, eventually we got there.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your background and your story in how you got in. Hopefully it was easy.
Well, I mean, I'm from a Sikh background. I'm from a working class single parent family. I went to state school. I was really lucky because my brother's a doctor, so... Yeah,
so there's like less pressure.
But, and he's a consultant at LGI. But I think for me, of course, every parent wants the best for their child. It goes without saying. And of course, my mum would have preferred if I was a lawyer or a teacher or something, or an accountant. But I think also I just decided what I was going to do, and I always wanted to work in television, and I just went and got it. And so I never really had those sort of things, and also I just never really told my mum stuff, to be honest. I just never really told her. So,
so did you do uni, or?
I went to Leeds University, and I did a degree in English and broadcasting, and then I was really lucky. I had my first job lined up before I left uni, which was as a BBC production trainee.
Okay, where was that?
At the BBC.
No, but I mean, where in the country?
Oh, in Wales.
In Wales?
In Cardiff.
Okay.
So, which was really good because it was, it was almost like a big BBC, but quite small. They did drama, they did factual, they did radio, etc. And so I applied for that and I got it. And I think for me, when I started in my career, if I look back on it now, I think ignorance was really bliss. I saw an advert and I applied and I got it, and I thought, this is really good. And I'm moving to Leeds, and but I think a lot of it was ignorance actually. Yeah. And I think if I hadn't got that, I wouldn't have known where to have started. Yeah. And I didn't know things like screen skills existed. Didn't know how to wouldn't know how to got my CV out or anything like that. So I didn't really have, and my degree didn't really teach me any of that either. So, I think that would, I think I was extremely fortunate, and I think I think I was kind of not the norm as such, what happened to me. Where I did see that was when I left the BBC after, I think it was like it was about 2.5 years I was there, when I did realise, how do I get a job? How do I apply? And I think that, that was when I realised how tough it is.
Yeah. Wow, so getting through the kind of the lean times is interesting. Well, we're going to have a chat about like surviving some of the lean times in a bit. But Jude, tell me a little bit more about your kind of journey into your career.
So I feel incredibly lucky for the start of my career because it was very smooth, very straightforward. I didn't have to wait 6 years, and I'm so sorry that you had to do that. So I grew up in Birmingham. I went to uni at Bournemouth, did TV production. As part of that course, you had to do 6 weeks work experience. So I did one of my weeks of work experience at a company called Hit Entertainment, who are amazing. And I met people there, and a year later when I graduated, I stayed in touch with them, and a year later when I graduated, someone got in touch with me who'd moved on to CBBC, and he said, we're looking for a new runner and you'd be perfect. So I wasn't even looking for a job, and I got one gifted. So I feel incredibly lucky to have had the start that I had in my career. But the start of my career was kind of as easy as it got, I think. From then on, it became more and more challenging. And in 2015, I suffered from an episode of depression, which was very challenging because it happened at the same time as stepping up to being a VFX producer, which was a job that I'd worked towards getting since the age of 15. So I was in this new company, I was in this new job, and I felt like crap. So that was a really challenging time where I was trying to manage my expectations of myself, my expectation of myself to absolutely smash this job, make an amazing impression, and continue growing in my career from there. And I also struggled with even just recognizing what it was. So for me, it was an incredibly physical manifestation, to the point where I couldn't open water bottles because my muscles were so weak. So for me, going to the doctor and saying, look, there's something going on, I was presenting with really physical challenges, not necessarily acknowledging how overwhelmed I felt, how foggy my thinking was, how my heart was racing all the time. It wasn't necessarily looking at the kind of psychological impact on me and my life. So they started looking down the route of it being chronic fatigue syndrome. And over time we realised that it wasn't, that it was an episode of anxiety and depression. So my challenges came a lot from myself, not wanting to recognise or acknowledge what was really going on with me. I had spent a couple of years at that point volunteering as a Samaritan. So I was very used to helping other people. I was the person that would help others. I wasn't the person who would ask for help. So that was something that I had to overcome and kind of learn about myself, really. And I managed to work my way through that episode. And then last year I started to feel the signs again of it coming back. And I was in a brand new job. Why does this happen in brand new jobs? Brand new job, wanting to make a good impression, and I dealt with it very differently that time. So I learned a lot over those 5 years.
Excellent. Bryony, talk to us.
Talk to you. Well, it's interesting talking about where you started, but I always knew I wanted to work in telly. I just had this hankering even as a kid, and it was the one thing that kind of got me through the really, really dark times when I was not at school and hospitals, but I had no clue what the hell I was going to do. I knew I wanted to work in telly. Don't know what, don't know how. The first challenge I had was actually getting into university.
Yeah.
Because at that point, legislation was not on my side. At that point, I'd phoned up so many universities and they go, oh, can I do this course? And they go, well, you can get in this one building, but the others are in a tower block, or they're in a period building, so or the accommodation. I just literally had to veto so many straight off the bat.
Yeah.
What I was lucky was that I came across university and I did media production. And randomly, I met my husband there, who's here, and and I went on this amazing journey to find myself and find what career I wanted. You leave university, you leave this lovely little bubble, and then suddenly you're like, oh God, what the hell do I do now? That's when the real challenge for me started as well. And I was then facing similar problems I had at the universities that I did with employment, where I'd go and send off cold CVs, I'd do the classic things you're supposed to do. I had no contacts, I knew no one. And I'd get responses going, yeah, do you want to come in for a chat? Or, no, we haven't got any jobs. And again, my problems were getting physically into buildings. I couldn't get into those interviews. I couldn't get into those placements. I couldn't get into those jobs. I was really stuck for a really long time, to the point where I was going, oh God, what do I do? Maybe this isn't for me. And I stuck it out, and my break came through an extend scheme for the BBC Extend scheme. So this was, God, about 15 years ago now. And it was brilliant because it gave me that foot in the door that I wouldn't have got otherwise. I think I might not be where I am today without it. And the challenge, and it's an amazing scheme. The challenge with it was a 6-month gig. You had 6 months and that was it. My challenge was I had to make the effort. I had to go and make those contacts, do that networking, meet people. And once that 6 months door was finished, they were like, bye, see ya. I never heard from them ever again. So I had to be the one to go out and be focused and driven because no one else was going to give me that opportunity, but gave me some contacts to start with, gave me some people to go and meet. And I was then really fortunate to start then getting some short-term little gigs like script reading. And that's where I realised I wanted to do script editing. And it was really challenging. And I went from job to job and I built up this interesting, great CV in drama. And it then got to the point where I was working at the BBC and things have started to slightly turn. I've got great anecdotes, which I'll probably come back to later, but I knew for me it wasn't quite the right place that I needed to be in creatively. And so I went into the indie sector and I went freelance and I haven't looked back. And I think actually it was an amazing place for me to start. It was an amazing place for me to grow, but ultimately I'm really glad I had that little stint and now I'm freelance and where I am now.
Well, freelance is an interesting thing, way to go on because obviously it's a big part of anybody who works in this business, of our experiences, right? So talk to me about freelancing. What was it like? Because obviously one of the difficulty that I found with freelancing was just like keeping body and soul together. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Feast versus famine. Do you know what I mean? I had a long period where essentially I bought like somewhere to live with my brother, right? And then had a real barren period of no money coming in, right? And he doesn't live in this country anymore, and I think that may well be the reason that he just goes, I just can't get far enough in the world away from him. You know what I mean? 6 months of just carrying your mortgage payments was just too much for him. You know what I'm saying? So I just wanted to talk to me about the whole freelance experience.
Well, the thing is, no one teaches you how to be a freelancer. That's the trouble, isn't it? And it is a part of our industry, and and I think it's something that should be highlighted as soon as people start. Yeah. And I think, TV, I always think television is, and film, but film and TV are such creative industries, yet they're the most conservative and kind of risk-averse industries at the same time. So, when you are a freelancer, and yes, of course, there's going to be barren periods, I think we as an industry could do better. And I don't mean that in terms of giving people jobs because, that's not how it works. But it's about preparing people for... Yeah. And I remember the first time I was out of work was when I just moved to London, similar sort of thing. I just moved in with my friends and maybe it was and again, I didn't have a CV. I didn't really know how to write a CV. I didn't know what you should put on a CV. I didn't know. I felt really embarrassed emailing companies. Yeah. Like, hi, remember me? And, can I please have a job? Yeah. And I remember one thing that always stuck in my head, and I've always, ever since as being a PD, a series producer, hopefully now as a ComEd, that I've always responded to emails, because I was once working at Endemol, I won't name the person, but they were like taking the piss out of people's CV emails that they'd written in, looking for a job, and I just felt that actually, we all want to work, we all want to do a good job, and I felt, so I think how freelancers get treated is really bad in this industry, and I've kind of, but also on the flip side of it, in those earlier days, I wish I was a little bit more thick-skinned, if I'd be honest. I wish I just had gone and sent those emails all the time and not kind of got so self-conscious about it, because I think we just have to sometimes put yourselves out there. And I think, for me, that comes up, I looked at some people who I'd worked with who just seemed that more confident than I was, and that more prepared to, who knew the right people and right people to contact, whereas I sometimes felt really self-conscious about it. Yeah. So, and we can argue, we can sit here and discuss why that happens, and that could be, to do with the school you go to, the upbringing you've had, to the background you are, or just the type of person you are. But I think as a freelancer, I think we can do more. And I think those sort of things do lead to mental health issues, actually.
Yeah.
And to hear that there's a mental health worker on productions, I think is fantastic, you know, to sit there and to talk, especially when you're junior. I just think about all the talent that this industry's lost because people are out of work for, you know, a quarter of the year, whereas I think if you can prepare people for life as a freelancer, I think we could do that more.
We could do a lot more as an industry. Talk to me about your kind of freelance kind of experiences. I know you talked about 6 years waiting to get a gig.
But then I had to, well, the thing is that, it was 6 years. It was very depressing. And I was like getting nagged at as well. But I lived at home. I had to like make that sacrifice of my parents nagging at me because I knew that I wouldn't be able to afford anything myself.
Yeah.
And then, so I did do some temping work just to kind of get some, so I can go on courses basically. So it's like, right, I've got some money, I can go on this course and try to keep my skills up because I wasn't getting anything anywhere else. So I thought, well, and then I went to some film festivals as well. So that was good to try to motivate myself. But I think sometimes, like when I got my first break through Creative Access, which is a charity for ethnic minorities, putting them into the workplace, I did have a period where I didn't work. I thought, God, this is, I thought I finally got my first credit, and now I'm still back where I was. So I just rung up my agency again, actually, and said, you know what, and they just sort of gave me a job. So I actually worked for the police for a bit in HR, and then I was still on the Facebook groups, and then another job came, and I got promoted. The police wanted to keep me. And then I was like, oh, great. And then I just got a new job. I was like, oh, this is fantastic. Parents were getting excited, and I was like, oh, this is great, but I'm not doing this. And I got a job, and they were like, can you just come for a weekend for this Bollywood film? Go, I went for the weekend. And they were like, can you do a week? So I rung up my agency. I said, I'm not going to be able to come in and do it. And they're like, well, if you don't come in, then you're not coming back.
Stick it. Yeah.
So I was like, well, it's no choice for me. I'm off. So I went to Bradford, did the Bollywood film for a week. And my sister's like, what are you going to do? I said, I'm just going to have to be like full Monty and pretend I'm going to work every day. My parents going to frigging kill me. And then luckily they kept me on. But that's how. But then because I'd saved for so long to go to school, you kind of get into the habit of saving as well. So I did have my ISA account, and then I'd taken some months off as well. So I did have my savings money, and it's so important to have that to pay for the phone bill and all the petrol and everything else, car insurance. But don't be ashamed to take another job if you don't get it. Yeah. And because you're temporary doing that job anyway. And if something else comes along, then say, I'm sorry, but this is my real job, and I'm going to go to that. There's no shame in that.
No, so it's just my most recent outside of the industry job that was just about keeping the lights on ended in 2017. Do you see what I mean? You know, so that's like, you go through bits where you like actually go up and down. You know, it seems crazy now. Yeah. Like I've got executive in my job title, which has kind of smoothed over a lot of the last 20 years of hassle from my mum. It's helped a lot, right? But so talk to me about your experiences, Bryony, as a freelance, because I'm interested to hear how you've kind of navigated that whole.
I'm going to be saying I'm being really lucky that I found an indie who fully supported me and kept me rolling. Rolling. Basically, I worked with Tiger Aspect, and I've been there 6 years. Yeah. And I wasn't starting. Literally, it was a short-term contract. It's coming to an end. I'm like, shit, what am I going to do? And they're like, oh, we've got another project. Do you want to do it? Yes, I do. Like this, but it is something you've got to prove yourself wherever you are. And they've been amazing. They've been so fantastic in supporting me in what I needed. And that was the fear when I left the comfort of the BBC. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And it's finding those support networks. It's really tough in this industry. It's really tough. And mental well-being, and having those things there in place for you is phenomenal. And I'm really fortunate I had mentors, I had people that I could turn to when I wasn't sure about something, when I was facing a crisis in confidence. That some of them I met at the BBC, some of them I met at Tiger, and they would go, why don't you try this, why don't you try that? And that's so crucial in this industry, particularly when you're freelance, to have those people that you can turn to in those moments where you're like, oh God, my contract's coming to an end, am I going to be unemployed for how long? Pick up the phone to someone and go, have you heard of anything? Do you know anything that's going on? But even just emotional support, just to have someone.
It's just interesting. Who are those people been for you? Who are the people who have kind of provided that support? You know, who's been your support network as you've kind of gone through?
So Richard Knight, actually, from Screen Yorkshire.
Yeah?
Yeah, so I sort of went on one of the Screen Yorkshire program boot camp things, and he liked my story, so I got on him, got on really well. And everyone that he has, he always looks after them. The jobs come in, he's there. If he knows I'm coming towards an end or something, he'll contact me. You can feel free to talk to him about anything.
Yeah.
So I would say he's been great, actually,
What about for you?
I think for me, I've never really had one person per se.
Yeah.
But I've used my peers a lot.
Yeah.
You know, and I think you probably get more from them, not just about hearing about jobs, but also just support because they're going through it at the same time as you. And but I think Bryony's right. I think getting somebody, a mentor, a figure who can help you, and I think you have to use your mentor wisely. I think because if you start to use them as a job shop, it's never going to work out. But you've got to use them for their advice and their support and actually learning how to kind of utilise that, I think, is really important. Really important.
Yeah. What about for you, Jude? Was there anybody that was particularly...
Yeah, I was very lucky. So in my first work experience at Hit Entertainment, I met someone called Vicky King who didn't get me my first job, but she's been really key, just knowing that I could email her at any point and just be like, look, I really want to do this, I don't know how to get there, like, have you got any advice? And she helped to get me the VFX job. And yeah, so in terms of someone who's just always been there throughout the last 12 years, it's been consistently her that I've looked up to, who is an animation producer, which was, you know, exactly what I wanted to be doing. And she was just always there at the end of an email. So yeah.
Sorry, do you mean mental back then or now?
Yeah, either.
Oh, right, sorry, I misunderstood.
If there are people that kind of who have been kind of key to helping you survive.
Oh, no, do you know,
I've had different people along the road.
I've completely misunderstood the question.
No, it's all right. Do you want to have another go?
Yeah, sorry. No, I would say in the latter... The reason, actually, it's, for me, it was... I'd never really had anyone when I was progressing up. It was only in the last few years, weirdly, through Screen Skills, that I got someone, which was Donna Tabor, who ran what's called the series producer course, which I was part of, who has probably... If I had done it when I was starting off, I would have just, like, you know...
You'd be running Channel 4 then.
But again, and it wasn't so much about... It was just talking to someone and being able to... When I was going through a job that was going really shit, it was really good to just go, am I going mad or am I... And, you know, just to have that person. And another one, like, you know, the other peer I would have had was another a friend of mine, but also somebody who I've worked for, a woman called Bijal, who has supported me and been a confidant as well. But then them two, I would say, especially in most recent years.
Interesting. Was there anybody particularly for you, Bryony?
Oh God, I've been really fortunate. I think in every job I've had someone that I could turn to, whether it was in that department. For me, I think the one thing I struggled with was finding actually someone who'd been through a similar experience I had from a disability perspective. I didn't have that. I actually only found someone about 2 years ago who's Asha Talla, who's a very well-known producer in the industry, and it's been so nice just going for a drink with him and just chatting crap about the industry and how tough it is and what we need to do and how we can try and change things. But those role models didn't exist for me, and I found that really, really challenging, and I wish when I was a kid coming up I'd had more. And I drunkenly, a couple of weeks ago, I was at the Broadcast Awards, he was really drunk and I was really drunk, and I actually said to him, I remember watching him go and picking up like a Golden Globe for The Office and picking up a BAFTA, and I just said, you don't understand how inspiring that was for me as a kid growing up to see that, because I didn't. There was no one else in existence, and that's why I think it's really important. Representation is important, not just in front of the camera, but behind the camera. Having those role models to look up to is so important for people coming through.
I think that's a really good point, actually, because I mean, I think as I've progressed over television, you rarely see people like you.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, whether that be a physical disability, a skin colour, or like I said, something that's neurological. Like, how do you, right? And because we don't really talk about those sort of things in television, because you know everything is about. I think the whole excuse of budgets and time are used as an excuse, and actually we should be more open to that. Yeah. And I noticed that, you know, I was coming back from Bristol in my first few weeks in Channel 4, and I was sat on a train with Fozia and Rita. Fozia is South Asian, Rita's black, and Babita, who's also South Asian. And I was sat there and I was like, I've never had this before. I've never sat with... And there was one other, Charlotte was there, and she was a white woman, and she was a minority. And I was like, but also it was this kind of second-hand of conversation we had, where we were talking about things without having to explain it. And I just thought, it just stuck with me for so long, because I was like, in all my years, I've never seen this, and it felt very normal, which is what was nice about it. And I think you know, television should be more, and I think that tide is turning. I think that conversation's happening a lot more. You know, I remember when I first started out, or during my years, and I was talking to people who grew up who were working with me, who grew up in number 11 Downing Street, or you know, producers who went on holiday with Prince William and Harry, and I was like, I went to Blackpool for my holiday. You know, I think
you got a holiday.
I got a holiday. I think that that tide is changing, and I think also I like to think that as you know people progress up television, we you know we don't just we hire people that might not have got that chance. We hire, you know, people have to deserve to be hired. Let's not, you know, we don't just hire people for the sake of it, but you hire people in your image because you see something in them, or you see that spark.
Well, it's interesting you should say that, because that leads me on to a point that I wanted to kind of get everybody talking about, was this idea of representing. Because you go into places and you're the one person. And I just wanted to talk about that whole, that idea of kind of having to represent everybody, like in a particular, and having to speak for everybody and being able to do that. And you know, that for me happened quite early on. I remember being not far from here in a lecture where the lecturer was telling everybody about the work of Stevie Wonder and kept pointing to me, like looking at me and going, and that's right. Like, I'm on the course too.
I'm not blind.
I'm like, what was it? And it's like this thing, constantly always having to somehow be an expert on all black people or all disabled people. And I just wanted to talk about, you know, that responsibility, or how you've kind of navigated that aspect of your experience.
I have to say, I haven't represented. Hands up, I haven't, because I didn't admit it for such a long time. Because I couldn't. You know, I would be seen as being flaky or making it up to get, you know, be able to have a beach day to work from home, which is what one manager called my working from home day.
A beach day?
A beach day,
nice.
Even though I was online at 8 a.m. till 8 p.m.
But do you think that's harder though? Because obviously, you know, it's quite rightly, the conversation about mental health has increased massively, and quite rightly, but you're right, 5 years ago, even 3 years ago, I think, and I suppose you can tell we're brown, you can tell you're in a wheelchair, but you can't tell what you're going through.
And it's an invisible disability, like severe depression is on the same scale as a spinal cord injury. So in terms of how disabling it is, it's the second most disabling, mental illness is the second most disabling thing that you can have experience. So that isn't recognised, and I think in the workplace I've felt like it's seen to be an excuse to be at home or to take time off, and I even had a friend ask me about this the other day, where he said to me, you know, how do I know that someone who's saying they're off for a mental illness is genuinely off for a mental illness? And I said to him, how do you know someone with backache is genuinely off for a backache? How do you know that someone with the stomach flu is off genuinely with the stomach flu? Like, we can't not acknowledge this as a real thing just because of the fear that some people might take advantage. And that's a real problem in terms of helping to break the stigma, I think. So it wasn't until my very last job where I knew that I had the opportunity to have an alternative career. It was only at that point that I felt like I could be really honest about what I was going through and actually say, you know what, I'm going through an episode of depression right now and an episode of anxiety, and this is not helping me. And that was the first time I felt able to, because you know what, if you're going to fire me, if you're not going to employ me again, I actually don't care. And it was incredibly liberating. And the thing that I found was that as soon as I said it, everyone had a story to tell. And we know that from the whole picture report that came out earlier this year from the film and TV charity, that 9 in 10 of us have had some sort of episode at some point in our life. And I think that the power in admitting what you've gone through is incredible, and it has made such a difference.
It's huge. It's absolutely. I've got so much respect for you for even being able to sit on this stage and talk about it, because you know, I think television hides, and I can only talk for TV, I can't talk for film, but we hide behind so many excuses, and actually for, you know, an industry that is meant to be all liberal and you know, kind of outward looking and all that, you know, we are quite narrow-minded, I think, and we do, you know, we always think about money and time, really. You know, for an industry that's really money and time poor and completely insecure, it actually doesn't have a lot of understanding. And I think, you know, by having that conversations now is good. And I think actually mental health is probably one of the barriers that we still haven't got over in terms of the people into it. You know, I think, and I think that to have those conversations is good.
It's been, yes, it's interesting because it's like, you know, you have these conversations and all of us now have much more vocabulary that we can use around all of these different subjects. So you can acknowledge that there's clearly progress being made. Sometimes when you're on the end of it, it doesn't feel like it. But, you know, sometimes you step back and you realise, oh, we have a word for that, or we have an inclusion person at our organisation who wasn't there 2.5 years ago or whatever. So we can kind of we can see some sort of progress. I guess what, you know, it would be interesting to kind of see if you have examples of things that have worked really well in terms of, you know, often when we're sitting here and we're talking about inclusion, we're talking about diversity, it's about, you got this wrong and this is terrible. But I'd be interested to know what were the times when it's like, hold on, actually, I'm like, I'm at this place and these people are getting it right, or I feel included, or I feel seen or recognised, or, oh no, this actually works. When of those, can you talk to me about those moments?
I mean, I think for me it was going on the SP course. It completely changed how I viewed myself. And that was led by Donna Tabor, and it was run by Screen Skills. And because it brought a group of us together, I think it's, you know, as I said, the strongest bond you'll ever make when you're working in film or television is your peers, really. Like, if you get on with your peers, you will provide yourself with a network. And what we had there was, I think there was 16 of us who were all together. And actually, you know, I've never ever felt whilst working in television, I never ever felt discriminated by my skin colour. But I've always felt slightly because of my class, being a working class lad from Bradford. So what Donna did was she created a team that was all of different, you know, social class, skin colour, ages, and we just felt very like normal. And I think that made me look at myself in a different way. And one thing I was going to say is, one of the things I realised as I progressed through was, and I wish somebody had told me this when I started, was actually how important you are as when you're working in television, because sadly there's a lot of people who aren't very good in television. And when I was a series producer, hiring somebody good was the most important thing. Because if you trust someone and you value their skills, then I think they're worth their weight in gold. And I think we sometimes, when you're progressing or when you're starting out, you don't realise actually how the power actually lies with you, because they can't make that program without you. You know what I mean? And that's one thing I learned. I really wish I'd known that before. And that doesn't mean I would be arrogant and I would walk around knowing the place. It would just mean I would know my value a bit more.
But I also think no one tells you that.
No one tells you
like,
that.
no one tells you when you're good. You never have a one-to-one with your manager. Like, never. I've never been sat down, other than at the BBC, and I said, let's have a one-to-one. When I was freelance, it just never happened. So you never know when you're doing a good job. So in your head, you're like, I don't know if I'm doing a good job. You're just full of all this insecurity and anxiety about like what your status is and what people think of you. And you always have to be on. You always have to be seen to be doing the best job. You always have to be working really hard because it's so competitive. You know, someone is just behind you about to come up and take your job. So yeah,
but
absolutely.
Somebody might be good, and I just think if you tell your team
that.
how great they are or how much you value them, everybody's going to work better, right? And I think that's something that is missing a lot, or was missing when I was progressing. If you knew how important, whatever role you are, you know, if you knew how important you were to that team, then you know, I used to be a floor runner, and I know that if I wasn't there, certain things wouldn't get job, but you never get told that. You know, I think that's really that's something that needs to happen more, definitely.
It's funny you said every transformative moment of my career has been there's a person kind of recognising me or understanding what I contribute, or at each point that where there's a big difference, where things have changed, where things have moved forward, there's been someone there who's gone, you know what, I see you, you're awesome. And those moments have really made a difference, you know, right the way through my career. So talk to me about, for you, Bryony, have there been examples of like people getting it right and being able to really include you?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when you were saying about, you can reel off all the negatives quite quickly, but the positives for me, it's being heard. And it's all about communication. It's all about not being fearful of communicating. And I think, particularly when you're starting out, when you don't know your value and you don't know how good you are, you're so scared to ask for something. You're so worried about being a burden that's actually the time you need to find your voice and to actually say, actually, I could really do with some help, I could really do with this, and then it will make my productivity so much better, and I'm going to be even better for you. And I think it's only in the last couple of years I've got better at that. It's taken me a really long time. You know, and I put up with things like not having toilets on a set, and I'd have to drive 15, 20 minutes to get to one, and I'd just be quiet about it because I don't want to make a fuss. It's fine. Or a lift being broken for 2 months and I couldn't work on the same floor as my team, you know. Again, you try and raise those. I can see you nodding here. But you're like, no, I'm going to be dignified. I'm going to be calm. So when actually someone turns around to you, they sit down, and they go, what do you need? What do you want? How can we support you? You suddenly go, what? It's a real shock. And to not have to beg for something or feel like you're begging for something is a huge win. And even now as producer, I still have to go around begging for things. I still have to go around begging for a ramp to my production truck so I can go and see people. But a lot of that is to do with people not being aware more than anything. And it's about raising awareness. And the only way we'll raise awareness is through communication. So it's kind of this twofold thing. And even like you were saying, we're all scared inherently to ask for things. We're all scared that we're going to be a burden and we're not good enough, that there's going to be someone else to take our job. But ultimately, in order to make the changes that we need to in the industry, we have to speak up. We have to be brave enough to do that. Not in a demanding, I must have this legislation, you know, so that doesn't work. But doing it in a way to say, that I'm as good as the next person, I just need time to prove it. If you give me this, this and this, I'll be there and I'll do it and I'll work so hard for you. And I think it's just about that. And I've been really fortunate. It took a long time, but eventually I've gotten there. got the right support without having to feel like I'm begging for it.
Yeah.
I think that question, what do you need? I
Yeah.
think it's just
It
so
relies in so many
powerful.
circles, yeah.
It's so engaging, and it shows so much about how someone is interested in helping make you a success, you know, and just help you do your job.
Absolutely.
And it could be as simple thing as putting a ramp somewhere, or it could be you come in at 10 and leave at 5 because actually the commute makes you really anxious. Or it could be you work from home one afternoon a week so that you can go to your counselling appointment. You know, just little things like that could actually make the world of difference.
Yeah,
and it means that you as an employee feel so much more committed to that company because they're engaging with you and they seem to care, which is so often not how you feel in a lot of production companies.
And I think this is also part of the problem in terms of losing great people at the beginning because they're afraid to ask. They're afraid it's difficult communicating and not getting the support that you need. That's why so many people leave so early, because it's having those things in place, and it will make a huge difference just mentally, physically, and lots of different stratas, I think.
So let's talk about solutions and ways of addressing some of the issues. Can you talk to me about something that would have made the difference for you, like a change you could have made, something that could have worked differently, something that you would initiate if you had the power? What's the thing that you would change or bring in or remind people about that would make a difference or may have made a difference in your particular journey?
Well, I think something as simple as we were talking earlier, and for me, I'm working on huge productions. I've got a huge crew of people, and they're working really long hours, and that concerns me. Their welfare concerns me. And I think the brilliant thing is having someone like you to come in and to provide something as a support and to say, look, we've got someone here. If you need it, I think that's an amazing thing, and we should be doing more of that. And I really want to do that more in productions I work on, because I think it's going to be fundamental to support, because we all know how crazy this industry is, particularly if you've got families, you know, the hours you work, and just to have someone there to go, actually, they're non-judgmental, they're here to help, they're here to listen, I think will just be, really, really important moving forward in the next few years.
Yeah. I think for me, I had a really interesting experience at the BBC as a freelancer, and I think two things. One, I would actually have them have some sort of proper onboarding for freelancers. Do you see what I mean? Something I wish that somebody had said to me, so this is all good, that check is all really good, but you realise that somebody's going to come knocking on your door 6 months from now wanting their chunk of each of those checks we're giving you, and just be aware of that. They're going to want roughly X%, so...
Just kind of life skills.
Do you see what I mean? So like a little bit of understand, just laying it. So that's the one thing, some onboarding for freelancers in all these big organisations, just to kind of give you a little... That would have helped me a lot. Do you know what I mean? In terms of early parts of my career, and several run-ins with HMRC. Do you know what I mean?
So like, whoa, I'm rich.
Exactly. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, I'm not. So that's like,
I definitely think a holistic approach to how television companies work with freelancers is still needed. Definitely. Yeah. You know, life skills, what to do, but also what do you do next? Yeah. You know, what do you do next? And no one ever sits you down and goes, I'm going to have a one-to-one with you and tell you where you were, because this is an insecure industry, and I think it always will be an insecure industry. And also, this industry is massively changing at the moment, and I think, you know, where television and film are in 5 years' time, no one knows.
Sure.
And if, you know, so I think an holistic approach to freelancers, you know, if they've moved down to London, how can they survive? I think if you can do that, you know, I think that is really important, actually, really important.
What about as someone who works in film?
I mean, I would say the same. What I would say, just regarding ethnic minorities, and because I worked on a TV show actually, so we had ethnic minorities and we had them as minors as well. And these kids, some of them, there were issues where they had problems with their parents, they didn't want them to come to the show. And I just thought, because most of the crew, I mean, costume and makeup, most of them were made up of white people, which I thought was a bit strange, considering we're dealing with Asian people in their clothes. I think in the last series I worked, they had one Asian costume designer, she was on a temporary. It would be to have someone who's like a race and diversity person, so they can trust someone, can sit down, talk about personal things and feel like they're being listened to and understood. Yeah. I mean, I was that role because I was the only, I think, the first time I worked there, I was the only Asian person. The second series, they had like 2 more, because Channel 4 had done an inclusion bit where they wanted more ethnic minorities, so each department had, which was great, I loved that. Yeah. So they'd come to me and they'd talk, because we can understand each other, we can talk about issues which are happening, and you know, it could be like, if you want me to talk to your parents, you know, I'm someone in authority and I've educated, it would be better, and I'm the same sort of. So that's what I would say with things like that. And even if I had some sort of, I mean, I did sort of have an issue actually with, I did feel that in part of my team that I was overlooked for stepping up jobs compared to my white counterpart, and that really annoyed me, but I didn't know how to go about it because it was my team. And then there were issues with the line producer where I did something, he's like, remember, you're just a runner. I thought, oh, you're messing with the wrong person. I'm not my father. I'm British born. I can be wherever I want to be. Don't put that label on me. But obviously, as a line producer, you can't say anything. So you're like, okay, well, I can't go and talk to him about it. And it sort of escalated. I didn't say anything because I was old school. Don't say anything, just look for another job and go. And the producer came to talk to me. She was a black lady, and I didn't really tell her what was going on. My team AD team found out. Suddenly I come back, and I'm like, oh, Sharon. I didn't say anything about what the issue was. I was like, oh, yeah. It's like, you know, there's some sort of stepping up to do. I never mentioned anything about stepping up. Now, we think it would be fair if you step up and she steps up. I thought, oh, so basically, you know there's an issue. You're terrified. You basically shut your pants. I thought, oh, God, something's going to big erupt. And then that's why you've given it to me. So it would have been nice to have someone a bit more higher, where I felt I could have spoken to about that quickly and told how to deal with it, because I didn't think my team was supportive. And you're very reluctant to use the word racism in the workplace because it's always negative. No one wants to accept it. They don't want to deal with it. No, you're just being fussy.
People shut down
they
and
do.
hand over to their lawyers.
I spoke with someone who was executive producer. You know what? It's great that you've got 2 ethnic minority directors for this show, which is about ethnic minorities. It's fantastic. You're giving them more creative roles. Shut down. No, okay, that's fine. I didn't want to talk about it anymore. I thought, we can't even have a conversation about this. No, where, from my bit, ethnic minorities, we're looking at people who are other ethnic, going, oh, right, Riz Ahmed's doing something. I went to Riz Ahmed's director. Right, I'm going to contact Riz Ahmed, see if I can direct his show. So and said, right, okay, he's brown, let's go and see. Because we are sort of looking for that sort of people that we can connect with and build networks in. But if people aren't willing to talk about it and you're feeling you're getting shut down, then you're kind of thinking, okay, I'll just have to keep my mouth shut and try and look for another avenue. So I would say that that's another thing, not to have fear to confront these issues.
So we've got time for a few questions, only a few questions. So quality questions is the question. You know what I mean? All right? None of this, what's your favourite colour type of stuff? Do you know what I mean? I need you to take it to the next level. We don't have a lot of time. There's a hand up here. No pressure. What's your question?
Hiya. I'm a fellow Bradfordian, so I don't really think I need a mic, but probably best to have one. I work for a training organisation in East London called Four Corners, and I'm currently working with a group of disabled trainees. And it's a broad spectrum of disabilities, from neurodiverse, physical, non-visible. And a lot of my trainees can't do entry-level jobs for physical limitations and other limitations. So what would you suggest as an avenue? I mean, they've done a lot of training with us. We've done edit training and production management training, and they all have an industry mentor, and there's work placements as well. But what I'm getting a lot from the production companies when I approach them is, initially they're really keen, and then when I actually go through the support they're going to have to provide, they start petering off, like, oh no, we're too busy. And it's like, well, you're always going to be too busy. And, you know, you're making Doctor Who, you're not saving lives. So I'm sort of looking for better responses from production companies, basically. And at the moment, I'm obviously their conduit to the industry. And if, without me, they don't have that platform at all. So I'm just sort of like, I guess trying to ask you how I can support them more, or what sort of jobs they should be trying to get in a realistic way.
It's classic. Like, I couldn't do a classic runner job because me, cups of tea, wheeling is just not going to happen, and burns and injuries will be caused. So it is that thing of production companies have got to think slightly out of the box. So for me, my first internship was like as a researcher. So it's all computer-based, it was all phone-based, meeting people, that kind of thing. So it's about finding an inroad for each of your team, the people that you're with, what they're interested in, you know, because if it's factual, research is a great avenue to start in. In drama, it is slightly trickier because the majority of starting jobs are runners and PAs. And so it's about finding companies, and we've had people who came to Tiger Aspect, and we deliberately carved out roles for them on a show. So we had a deaf girl who came and worked with us on Ripper Street. We gave her a really brilliant research job. But it's about the production companies being open to it and going and saying, no, we'll find something. And there's always stuff to do. To say that there's not something to do is absolutely ridiculous. You know, and it's about carving out that right role for that individual. So I'd say, we can have a chat afterwards, but I think it's also about production companies who step up and go,
Culture.
absolutely, what do you need? Well, let's have a chat about it, and not rather than shutting you down and going, we're too busy, because that's just bullshit. Excuse my language.
And I know that the government have probably cut loads of welfare anyway, but what support, isn't there
There is an
grants and access to them?
There's a fund that's supposed to help you pay for
is that-
I would
reasonable...
say it's one of the beautiful things that everyone will throw around willy-nilly. Access to work goes access to work. It's not as simple as that, and actually they've cut back a lot of funding.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
Weeks and weeks to actually...
Months. And if you're freelance, it's even worse.
Yeah, and the other thing it worked for me was transport. 4 of my trainees
Yeah.
in wheelchairs.
Yeah.
And, some of them are London and some of them are outside.
Yeah.
And once in London, I had a taxi firm booked in, and then they just didn't show up. So my training was
Yeah.
a day of training.
Yeah.
And then the ones that did show up were brilliant, but it was £55 a journey. So
Right.
I spent like 220 quid.
Yeah.
Like a few days
Getting-
just getting him from Cricklewood to
Yeah.
Bethnal Green. It was obviously...
So it's very easy for like people to stand at the top and say, all these schemes you can apply to, access to work. They will take months, and even then you're not even going to necessarily be approved. You have to jump through a whole set of tick boxes, and you know, it is more expensive being a disabled person, particularly in a main city and going to work and things like that.
So Tiger Aspect, for instance, couldn't apply for a grant to get a ramp and get certain access modifications done. They would have to do it via this is our employee and this is why we're doing it.
Yeah, so for example, I needed a trike to get me onto set so I could get basically where I needed to be. Access to work weren't able to grant me that, so Tiger went into their own pockets, out of their own budgets. Yeah. Where I was really fortunate, when I stepped up I did a make move scheme with Skillset for one of my jobs on Peaky, and I stepped up to associate producer. So they were able to get a bit of extra money, and they went, oh, that'll go towards the ramps. So you're like, it's not, you're like, it's, you know, it's a positive thing and a negative in some respects. So there are certain things out there, but they are few and far between, and you have to fight for them. You have to really fight for them. And it is statistically known as a disabled person trying to break into this industry is far more expensive because we can't use public transport. And wages are always lower to start with than even everybody else. And so you do have to work harder. And so, again, it's from economic backgrounds. You want disabled people from working class backgrounds. But again, it's having those opportunities. So unless you can get on a scheme that can support you, it's really bloody hard.
I think it is. I think you're really right. I was on a panel before, and somebody said to me, we were talking about schemes and training schemes, and somebody said to me, do you think it's a bit, I've forgotten the exact word they used, but do you think it's a negative thing that we use the word BAME? And I went, why? I don't understand why, why we shouldn't be using the word bend, because it is what it is and it's an avenue to in, and we should embrace it rather than getting all slightly like we're walking on eggshells around it, because you know what, if it's a chance for somebody to get a break, then I'm all for it. If it's a chance for somebody to have a door open, then we should be. And I think sometimes I've heard it. I've heard it about myself, and I've heard it about other people being said, oh, well, they've only got that job because of the colour of their skin or whatever. And I think, you know what, you're always going to get those sort of comments. And, you just need to tell those people to kind of do one. And actually those, any opportunity, any kind of door opening, window opening, whatever, you just have to run through it and go through it, I think.
And even if you get that start, you've then got to work 5 times harder than everybody else to prove yourself.
And it is true, true actually, because the majority of us didn't grow up in number 11 Downing Street. We are, the majority of us, especially when you're, like you said, living in London, it's expensive if you're, like you said, if you're not in a wheelchair, never mind if you are and you're going through all of that. So I think that's one thing I would say, is never, any opportunity you get, just grab it and like apply for it and like push it through, and don't be worried that it has 4 letters in front of it, because you still have to prove yourself.
Absolutely. We have another question. There's some more. All right. So what we'll have to do is we'll keep, because we haven't got a huge amount of time. We've got to make a decision about where this microphone is going, though. It's over here, all right? Because we can't waste time with that.
Hiya. I'm just wondering, I worked in production for a long time and ran events. I'm now looking to get back into the industry after a while away, and I've got a disability and health limitations. But particularly Iyare and Harjeet, what is your approach to flexible working and making adaptations and allowances where needed?
Okay, we'll talk about Channel 4 first.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak, I've only been at Channel 4 for a few months, and I know that, but we are obviously an inclusive broadcast. But Channel 4 is it's technically a publisher. It's not, it doesn't make its own programs. It commissions companies to make them. But I would say that if you were approaching a company and you want certain adaptations of how you work or where you work or when you work, I think you should follow what Jude said, which is you should speak up and say, this is what I want and this is what I need for me to do the best job I can. This is what I can. And actually, it's very easy for me to sit on a stage and say that, but I've been in your shoes where you're starting a job and you've already you're through that door, and the last thing you want to do is start throwing demands about. But I think, you need to find that voice and be able to say, look, for me, I want to do this job. I'm coming back, and you'll have 100% of me, but I just need these tiny kind of modifications. And whether that's me working, 10 till 5, or can I do half days or can I have Fridays from home? I think if you don't ask, you don't get.
I think you've also got to bear in mind that particularly around film, people who want to, for instance, have their project qualify for a BAFTA have to now start working within the kind of BFI's diversity standards. So a lot of the time, when you're turning up saying, well, I need this and everything, mention, was it standard D? Do you see what I mean? A lot of the time, when you'll be showing up to companies, if you can do the job, you will be doing them a favour by knocking on their door and making them aware of you. And I think the thing is remembering that, there are forces at work within this industry that are trying to be inclusive. So it's not like they're not doing you a favour by letting you in. You're doing them a favour by saying, here I am, I can help you out.
Know your value. As I said before, you're valuable to them, because if they need good people, whatever thing you work on, if they hire shit people, they've got a shit project. Sorry, I shouldn't swear, should I? Oh, you know what I mean. But if they hire good people, they've got a great project, and they'll want you, and if they have to make tiny changes, then of course. And I think you should know your value. And do you know what? The way I always see it is, some posh, privately educated guy would probably shout up and demand what he wants. So why shouldn't you?
Yeah, it's true.
Okay. We've got time for one or two more. There's you've got the mic. You decide. I don't want the responsibility. Yeah, go on.
We're from the film and television charity, so thank you, Jude, for giving us a shout out there with our mental health research. All of the things that you've discussed today feel really, really important for the industry. I'm also passionate about opening doors to women who were trying to re-enter the industry and for parents generally, because it's so difficult to get back out there, and we lose, I think, such a wealth of experience and talent because people have some time away to be carers or parents, and then trying to get back is just super, super difficult. I wondered what your thoughts were around that and how the industry is tackling it or not tackling it.
I mean, personally, my direct manager also has 2 children, so for me that's personally made life a lot easier, just from the point of view, like I feel like I can talk to you about this and you've got some sort of understanding why actually Wednesday morning I really want to be at this assembly or something. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And so just having people around, like, for me, that first thing has been about having someone around who has some sort of empathy for your situation is a really great start point.
Yeah.
Weirdly, I got an email last week from an organisation, and it's 2 people who've set up who're doing job shares, and they've I think one's a parent and then the other one I don't think they are, but they're job sharing, and their argument was you're getting 2 great people for the price of one, and I think that there is ways you can go about it. There is innovative ways about if you're re-entering, and especially if you're a parent. How do you do it? I've just, my daughter's 9 months old, and obviously my wife is the one that looks after her, during the day. But I was thinking if she worked in television, how would we do that? And I think again it goes back to what Jude and Bryony said earlier, which is you've got to find your voice when you're re-entering. And an old exec of mine said that when she started a company, she said she made 2 demands, which was, she wanted 2 mornings where she started at 10 so she could take her kids to school, and 2 afternoons where she finished at 6 so she could put them to bed. And I think, and she said, she would work onwards after they'd gone to bed, and she would work, in the morning, she'd get up early and do the work. So I think it's a little bit of give and take, but it's also about, more importantly, it's about finding your voice, I think, and making those demands.
Yeah.
Especially about women who get to a certain demographic and it just drops away from you. And if you've done that, you tend to have less confidence, so you're less, it's less likely that you're going to be able to know your value. There's still a lot of work.
There is still a lot of work. There is still a lot of work. I think you're right, but I think it's also, I think there is ways around it, and it's just about, I think more so if people like yourselves are coming into those conversations and trying to get eyeballs with people at broadcasters right through to production companies and saying this is how, these are, you think it's difficult, but actually there's only slight changes you can make. So I think having a wider conversation is important, and bringing those things and using organisations like Screen Skills who do have a real powerful voice.
It's about just addressing the culture within the organisation. So you'll sit there and you go, right, well, somebody comes to you and says, right, actually, can you help? I'm dealing with this sort of whatever's going on. It's being open to that, and the expectations we have of the people who work within our organisations, of the people the people that I'm hiring as my heads of department, or the people that I'm putting into my commissioning jobs or whatever. How do I expect them to treat people, right? And it's about addressing that culture that actually for a long time we've allowed the sort of dismissiveness of all of these, of all sorts of different issues. And this whole idea is, there's a culture of, right, I work you to within an inch of your life, and you will give me everything.
And you'll be grateful for it.
Exactly. And that culture of just that expectation has to be.
But also, I honestly think, if it's a mum re-entering the industry, for example, all the powerful people in TV are women. All the channel controllers are women, and some of the best execs I've ever worked with are women. And I think, no one should ever be held back from going back into the industry having a child, because I think it's something that's so universal, and that if it is still happening, that's really, really terrible, actually.
I think there are different roles that have different, I think production roles in general are probably easier to job share. I've got a friend who's in editorial who is looking to go back after having her first baby, and she's really struggling to find a job share. She says it's impossible, so she's either going to have to find a company who's willing to do 4 days a week or 3 days a week, or she's going to have to just go back full time, and it's either that or she just doesn't go back. And that's such a heartbreaking choice to make when you spent 12, 13 years building your career up. Such a loss.
And we can't afford it. As an industry, we can't afford it.
No,
Like
you can't.
literally, we've got a massive looming skills gap, and we cannot afford to leave anybody out.
But then I think there has to be a wider conversation, and that's where I think, you know, organisations like Screen Skills, BFI, you guys should be coming in and getting together. And because even when I did the SP program, there was, you know, one of the things it was open to was parents coming back into the industry to rebuild and reconnect. And I think it's hard, don't get me wrong, and I can definitely hear it's hard, but I think, you know, it's just another barrier that needs to be broken, but it can be, and there must be ways that we can work around that.
Absolutely. Well, we are out of time, I'm afraid. All right, so I know there were other questions, so if you've got questions, maybe you can catch people on their way out, all that sort of stuff, or send an email. I don't know. I have no option. You know what I mean? We're supposed to be about solutions, actions, not words. All right? But listen, please join me in thanking our panel this afternoon. So Bryony, and Jude, and Sharon, and Haj, and I'm Iyare. Thank you very much.